Marcus Chen had filled out exactly one form incorrectly in his entire administrative career, and it had landed him here. The Federated Systems Personnel Assignment document had 2 sections. Section 1. Support Pool, General Duties, Rotational Assignments, Standard Depot Work. Section 2. Direct Attachment, Embedded Placement with Active Field Units. He'd meant to select Section 1. His stylus had slipped. Or he'd been distracted. Or the universe had a sense of humor. 3 days later, exactly long enough for central processing to finalize placements, the assignment notification arrived. Talon Squad, 9th Expeditionary Wing, Keshri Formation Class. All-female unit. Non-human personnel. Keshri Physiology Type. Report to Unit Commander immediately. Marcus stared at the notification for a full minute. Is there an appeal process? He asked the processing clerk. She was Keshri herself, tall, with skin that shifted between copper and bronze depending on the light, and the expression of someone who'd processed 12,000 forms this month alone. Appeals close 72 hours after filing, she said without looking up. You're at 86 hours. Right. Talon Squad has been without a coordinator for 14 weeks, she added. They cycle through them quickly. Marcus didn't ask what that meant. He picked up his assignment packet and left. The transport to Talon Squad's facility took 30 minutes through mountain terrain. The base was carved into a cliff face, half architecture, half geology. The morning sun made the stone glow amber. Marcus arrived at the gate with his gear bag and his carefully maintained composure, the same composure that had gotten him through 12 years of interspecies postings without incident. The gate guard was Keshri, 7 feet tall, broad-shouldered, with indigo skin marked by ceremonial scarring along her jawline. Her eyes tracked him with the focus of someone trained to assess threats. She examined his documentation. She examined him. She examined the documentation again. You're the new coordinator, she said. I am. A pause. Commander Rakin is in the West Wing. Don't cut through the training grounds. They're running live drills. Understood. The base interior was organized chaos. Equipment arranged in precise rows, labeled in Keshri script he could read at intermediate level. Weapons racks. Maintenance stations. A combat training area with padding worn down from years of use. Every person moving through the space was Keshri. Every single one was female. And every single one stopped to look at him when he passed. Not hostile, just assessing. Marcus kept his pace steady and found the West Wing through logic and observation. He counted it as a small victory that he didn't need to ask for directions. Commander Rakin was at her desk when he knocked. She didn't look up immediately. She was writing, actual handwriting on a data tablet, which suggested either ritual or deeply ingrained habit. In a combat commander, Marcus suspected the latter. She was powerfully built even by Keshri standards, with dark hair pulled back in a severe braid and scars that told stories Marcus knew better than to ask about. Her rank insignia indicated field promotion, earned through action, not time served. When she finally looked up, her eyes were the color of molten gold. Marcus Chen, Federation Civilian Coordinator, Grade 2. Yes, Commander. You're aware this is an all-female unit. I became aware approximately 86 hours after the correction window closed. Something flickered across her face. Not quite amusement. The last 4 coordinators requested transfers within 2 weeks. One filed a formal complaint about our training schedule. What happened to the complaint? Still processing, I assume. We haven't had a coordinator since. Marcus set his bag down in the corner, precisely, not presumptuously. Commander, I checked the wrong box on a form and missed the correction window. I can request reassignment if you'd prefer not to have a civilian male in your unit structure. Or I can do the job I was assigned. Logistics coordination, documentation management, and supply chain oversight. Your choice. Rakin studied him for a moment that stretched just past conversational. West Wing, 3rd door. Those are your quarters. Briefing at 0700 tomorrow. Thank you, Commander. Don't thank me yet, she said, and returned to her writing. The morning briefing was Marcus's first time in a room with all of them. 14 Keshri warriors. Plus Commander Rakin. They watched him enter with the focused attention of people trained in threat assessment. He took a seat at the far end of the table and waited. This is Marcus Chen, Rakin said from the front. No explanation. No justification. Just his name. Then she moved on to the briefing. It was a supply run. 3 transport vehicles from Central Depot to the forward staging area. Marcus's job was manifest verification and resolving a documentation error from the previous shipment. Simple work. He'd done it 100 times. What wasn't simple was the attention. The woman directly across from him, exceptionally tall even by Keshri standards, with silver-white hair and a scar bisecting one eyebrow, watched him like a puzzle she hadn't decided to solve yet. Her name, he learned, was Vix, Senior Tactical Specialist, trusted with problems the plan didn't account for. After the briefing, she crossed to his end of the table. You're not military, she said. Civilian logistics. The others didn't last. So I heard. That doesn't concern you? Marcus considered. I'm concerned about the documentation error from last shipment. Errors like that usually mean someone downstream is missing critical equipment. That I can fix. The rest I'll figure out as I go. Vix studied him for another moment, then walked away without comment. He took that as neutral. The documentation error was worse than reported. 6 line items misrouted. Equipment meant for Talon squad distributed across 4 different units. Marcus spent 6 hours on communication channels, navigating bureaucracy, and one particularly unhelpful depot supervisor before locating everything and initiating retrieval. He was still working at 1340 when someone set a meal container beside him. He looked up. One of the younger squad members. Bronze skin, wide gray eyes, uncertain expression. You missed midday meal, she said. In the unit, you eat with the unit. I didn't know that was protocol. It's not official protocol. It's just how things work. She left before he could respond. Marcus looked at the container, opened it, ate while finishing his calls. By 1620, he'd located all 6 items and filed the retrieval authorizations. He wrote a summary for Raken noting 3 structural problems in the depot's filing system that would keep generating these errors until someone fixed them. He sent the summary. He went to evening meal at the unit time. There was a gap at the end of the table where Talon's squad sat. Marcus took it. No one told him to move. By the end of the first week, Marcus had established several things. First, Talon's squad operated at high intensity with minimal downtime. What downtime existed was used for maintenance and training. The previous coordinators had apparently found this oppressive. Marcus found it comfortable. It gave the unit rhythm, and rhythm was structure, and structure made work possible. Second, the Keshri had an opinion of humans that fell somewhere between skepticism and bemusement. This wasn't personal. It was professional assessment. The Keshri had 7 generations of military history. Humans had 3 generations of interspecies contact. The math was clear. Third, the younger woman who'd brought him food, her name was LYSS, handled internal communications, which overlapped with logistics. By day 3, she'd started asking questions about coordination protocols. Her questions were precise and indicated she'd fully processed his previous answers. He found her professionally impressive. Fourth, Vix was still watching him. Not constantly, but frequently enough to be deliberate. Marcus noted this and continued working. On day 5, the supply run went wrong in the specific, localized way supply run sometimes went wrong. 2 vehicles unloaded without incident. The third had a failed magnetic seal. The rear cargo had shifted during transit. Technically stable, but only technically. Marcus examined the situation. The shifted containers held precision calibration equipment worth 400,000 Federation credits. Hold the unload, he told the driver. He climbed into the cargo bay and assessed. 4 minutes later, he climbed back out. We need to manually resecure before moving anything. It took 20 minutes. Marcus and the driver maneuvering 350-kilogram containers with cargo straps and creative leverage. When he emerged, 6 members of Talon's squad were watching. Manifest complete when this bay clears, Marcus said to no one in particular. Vix stepped forward. You knew the cargo value, without checking your tablet. I reviewed the manifest this morning. It's standard practice. You also knew the container weight, estimated based on container type and standard packing density. I was probably within 30 kilograms. Vix was quiet for a moment. The previous coordinator, in a similar situation, called for a full depot recovery team and delayed operations by 8 hours. That's also a valid approach. I just didn't think it was necessary. Why? The seal was failing slowly. The containers were stable enough to resecure manually. Waiting for a recovery team risked missing the weather window. The math favored handling it ourselves. He paused. Also, I've worked with this vehicle model before. Where? Geological survey. Wrong box situation actually similar to this one. Aimed for a diplomatic posting. Ended up on a mining survey for 16 months. You learn what you need to learn. Something shifted in Vix's expression. Not the puzzle look anymore. Something else. She walked away without comment. That evening in the mess, the gap beside Marcus was smaller than before. On day 8, the training incident happened. Marcus was crossing the yard, his usual route blocked by maintenance, and had to detour past the combat training area. He heard the problem before he saw it. The sound of controlled movement becoming uncontrolled. One of the squad, Kess, the tactical specialist, was on the ground with a badly angled knee. Her face held the carefully controlled expression of someone managing significant pain through willpower alone. Marcus crossed the training mat and crouched down. Can I look at it? Kess looked at him. Not hostile. Assessing, but colored by pain. You have medical training? Enough for field assessment. I can tell you if it needs a medic. She considered, then shifted her leg slightly, an extension of provisional trust. Marcus examined the knee with practiced efficiency. He'd done this enough times across 12 years to know what he was looking for, and he'd studied Keshri physiology his first week for exactly this reason. Not torn, he said. Probably significant ligament strain. You need ice and compression for an hour minimum, and you shouldn't put full weight on it today. The unit medic should examine it properly, but that's my read. Kes looked at him with an expression he couldn't immediately categorize. You're not going to tell me to stop training? That's not my decision. You know your body and your operational requirements. I'm just giving you information. Silence in the training area. Different from previous silences. Marcus got the ice pack from the supply station and brought it back with a compression wrap. Then he continued to his scheduled call. He found out later from LYSS, who seemed to have appointed herself his unofficial interpreter, that his assessment had been correct, and that Kess's opinion carried significant weight in Talon's squad. What she thinks eventually becomes what the unit thinks, LYSS said. What does she think? She hasn't said directly, but she's stopped watching you. Marcus filed this under things to note without acting on. On day 12, Commander Aiken called him to her office. She was at the window instead of her desk, looking out at the mountains in late amber light. Sit, she said without turning. He sat. You've been here 12 days. Yes, Commander. The documentation error is resolved. The depot filing problems are flagged. The supply run completed on schedule despite the cargo incident. Yes, Commander. She turned from the window. The amber light caught her face, warming the dark bronze of her skin. Her gold eyes were entirely unreadable. The last coordinator submitted 2 formal complaints in his first week. The one before that lasted 4 days. We've been operating without coordination support for 14 weeks, which means we've been doing our own logistics on top of combat readiness. Why are you still here? Marcus thought, honestly, the work needs doing, and I know how to do it. That's not a complete answer. He considered. I've worked with Keshri military units before. Vren diplomatic staff. Merrick engineering crews. A joint species station with 18 different cultures in one structure. When I'm in a new environment, I pay attention to how it works before forming opinions about it. He paused. This squad works. You run a disciplined unit. I'd have to be significantly less intelligent than I am to find that threatening. Raken looked at him. The gold eyes moved slightly, not threat, not warmth, something adjacent to both. Vix thinks you're competent, she said. That's good to hear. From Vix, it means more than it sounds. Another silence. She moved to her desk, picked up her tablet. The conversation ending motion. Briefing at 0700. There's a transport authorization issue on the northern route. I want it resolved by end of week. I'll have preliminary assessment by morning, Marcus said and left. The transport authorization turned out to be a jurisdictional dispute between 2 depot administrators who'd been avoiding each other for 7 weeks. Marcus spent 2 days mapping the dispute, identified the actual problem, a terrain classification error with budget implications, then spent one afternoon in a 3-way channel with both administrators and a legal coordinator. He was very polite and very specific and didn't allow anyone to avoid the actual question. The authorization was signed by end of day 4. He delivered the documentation to Raken at 1640. She looked at it. 7 weeks. The core problem was about 20 lines of database code. Someone will need to fix that, but it's the depot's issue to escalate. The route is clear. Raken set the documentation down. You'll stay past the standard 4-week rotation. I'm filing an extension request. Not a question. An offer. Yes, Marcus said. I'll stay. The change, when it came gradually and then all at once. Week 3 brought a full squad terrain exercise. Marcus wasn't participating in combat operations, but he was managing logistics support. The exercise ran long. Weather delayed return until near dark. When they came back, Vix was last. She always checked that everyone else was accounted for first. She set her equipment at the return station. Everything reconciled, Marcus said. She picked up her gear, then stopped and turned back. When you were in the cargo bay, you knew that vehicle model. When you assessed Kess's knee, you knew Keshri physiology. When you resolved the authorization dispute, you knew the jurisdictional code. She paused. You pay attention. Not because you're trying to prove something, because that's how you do things. Marcus didn't know what to say to that. Yes. Vix held eye contact for a moment, not challenging, not assessing. The other kind. That's uncommon, she said, and went to return her gear. Approximately a week later, LYSS came to his quarters at an off hour with a question that turned out not to be about work. The other coordinators, she said, when the unit assessed them and found them insufficient, they became uncomfortable and left. But you didn't change when we were assessing you. I focused on the work. How did you know you were sufficient? Marcus thought seriously. I don't always know, but I know what I can do and why I'm doing it. When I'm uncertain about outcomes, I'm certain about the work. That gets me far enough. LYSS was quiet. I'm the youngest in this unit. I do my work correctly, but I don't always know if I'm enough. Marcus looked at her. The workflow system you rebuilt. You did it from memory after one explanation, and your version was better than mine. That's not someone who does tasks. That's someone who thinks. She was very still. You believe that. LYSS, you're going to be good at everything you do. That's already clear. She left shortly after with the composure of someone processing new information. On the morning of day 28, Marcus woke to find something had shifted. It was in the morning briefing, Raken directing questions to him by name. In the mess hall, the gap beside him had closed entirely. In the way Vix watched him, no longer searching but decided. That morning, 4 of them fell into step with him crossing the yard. LYSS, Kess, and 2 others, heading toward morning briefing. One of them, Mara, who handled equipment logistics, said, "The northern route authorization held." Good. The administrator filed a counter-appeal. I know. It's procedurally incorrect. He missed the filing window by 4 days. I've already flagged it. Mara looked at him. How do you already know it's incorrect? I read the procedural code when I mapped the original dispute. Once you know the sticking points, you anticipate the next ones. Mara glanced at Kess. Something passed between them. There's a navigation exercise next week, Kess said. Civilian coordinators don't usually participate, but Commander Raken mentioned the logistics role could include terrain familiarization. Marcus understood this wasn't really about terrain familiarization. Tell me when it's scheduled, he said. He went to Raken's office that evening. The navigation exercise, he said. I'd like to participate. Raken looked at him steadily. Coordinators aren't required to do terrain exercises. No. But I have an incomplete understanding of the southern approach. That's a gap. Silence. A coordinator who does terrain exercises isn't standard assignment level, Raken said carefully. It changes the nature of the position. I understand. Her gold eyes held something he'd stopped trying to read and started simply noticing. The unit watches people, she said. You know this. Yes. And you know what they've concluded. I know they've stopped looking for problems. I don't know what they found instead. Raken was quiet for a long moment. Then she made a note on her tablet. Exercise is 0600 Thursday. Get terrain boots for Mara. She returned to her work. Marcus was at the door when she said, Marcus. He stopped. The unit doesn't watch outsiders with that quality of attention, she said. Thursday came cold and clear. The southern approach was technically demanding, rock-cut terrain that didn't cooperate. Marcus's role was position tracking and terrain documentation. At the 3rd waypoint, he flagged a drainage feature, larger on the ground than the map indicated, potentially hazardous for night operations. At the 5th waypoint, Mara appeared beside him. You flagged that feature before we reached it. I predicted it from elevation data. The map's contour lines suggested it was larger than classified. Mara was quiet. The previous coordinator, on an exercise he was required to attend, complained for 3 hours and turned back at the 2nd waypoint. Terrain doesn't have opinions, Marcus said. It just has features. Something in Mara's expression shifted completely, like a bridge deciding to hold. Yes, she said, and fell into step. They returned at 1400. Marcus spent 2 hours completing documentation, correcting the drainage classification, and filing updates with the depot survey office. He was finishing when the door opened. Not LYSS. Raken. She stood in the doorway with her particular quality of stillness. The afternoon light did that thing again, warm and cool, balanced on the angles of her face. The terrain documentation, she said. Filed with the survey office. I noted classification errors for correction. You weren't required to do that. No. But it needed doing. She came into the room. Didn't sit, stood at the edge of the workspace, and Marcus was aware, in the specific way he'd been careful not to act on, of how the distance between them had become something he thought about. The unit had a discussion last night, she said, about the extension request, about the nature of your role here. Marcus waited. Talon Squad doesn't operate well with rotating coordinators. We've determined that the problem isn't the structure, it's the person. She paused. There's a permanent embedded coordinator designation. It requires both unit and coordinator consent. The pay grade is higher. The assignment is open-ended. She looked at him directly. The unit voted to request you for permanent designation. Marcus held this for a moment. 14 Keshri warriors who'd spent 28 days deciding whether he was sufficient. The vote was unanimous, Raken added. Yes, Marcus said. I consent. Raken looked at him for a moment, slightly longer than necessary. The amber and cool light did what it did. Her gold eyes held something that was not assessment, hadn't been assessment for some time. Good, she said. She turned to leave. Commander, Marcus said. She stopped. He thought about the question he wanted to ask, about whether the thing in her eyes was what he thought it was, about the morning months from now, when one of them would have to account for it. The navigation file, he said instead. I can brief the southern approach corrections tomorrow if the 0700 slot is open. The corner of Raken's mouth moved slightly. Not quite humor, not quite its absence. The 0700 slot is open, she said, and left. LYSS came by later, as she usually did. She looked at him with her wide gray eyes. The permanent designation, she said. Yes. You knew it was possible. I knew the structure existed. I didn't know if the unit would want it. LYSS considered. We wanted it after the cargo bay. We discussed it 3 days after the supply run. The commander waited to see if you'd stay consistent. 25 days of waiting to see if the person matched the appearance. Did she have doubts? Marcus asked. No, LYSS said. I think she waited because she's precise about things. When something's important, she wants to be certain. She left him with that. Marcus sat in the quiet and thought about precision and forms with extra checkboxes and how the best outcomes he'd ever had started as errors and became something else entirely. Outside, the base lit its running lights, amber and cool white together, exactly the color he'd been noticing for 28 days. He picked up his tablet and started on tomorrow's briefing notes.